I definitely want to know the value in what casitas, but now going into
I skipped over casitas. I went with pools and
or even more or less going towards ADUs now.
Oh, it's one of my
Yeah.
favorites. Another
So,
class I
yeah.
have.
Okay.
I can do this in under 2 minutes.
Yeah.
ADUs and casitas are a controversial topic. And as of February 18th, oh my God, is it 2020? We now have to measure houses by ANSI standards, ANSI. Google that later. And then any realtor that wants to know what we can and can't do, it's right there. ANSI means that every appraiser has to measure homes and calculate the square footage the exact same way. Because for the longest time, people were rounding to the half foot, rounding to the nearest foot, including this because it looks similar. It was like Thunderdome. And we finally had to rein it in. So ANSI stepped in and came up with the standard valuation model. Here's what I want to say about that is I teach this class because it frustrates people. Arcadia has a lot of casitas. Chandler, Phoenix does. Not as much when you get to like Surprise and Glendale and Goodyear. They're out there. If you have a casita, it will not and cannot by law be attached to your square footage of your home. If you are listing a 2,000 square foot home, 1,200 square foot of it is the home and 800 square foot is a casita, you could lose your license as a realtor because you're misleading. You need to separate that out correctly. You need to say 1,200 square foot main house, 800 square foot casita detached, attached, whatever you say, separating that out. I've been a witness on 2 that have gone to the state, and one of the realtors lost their license because they were using price per square foot and they were including a casita. You can't do that. It's not price per square foot.
So how's the value added to a casita?
I will say this. It depends on the market. It depends on the market. That's an easy appraiser answer. A casita in PV is going to matter significantly different than a casita in Litchfield Park. A massive difference. But I will tell you this is almost a fact. It's less than the main square footage of the house. So if you're adjusting at $200 a square foot on the appraisal, don't expect it to be dollar for dollar on a casita. For multiple reasons, different marketability. Not everybody wants a casita, so it's already less than. Insurance companies don't like insuring them. It's a little bit, so it's less than. There's a lot of these subcontext that comes into play with casitas and ADUs, but a solid way of comparison is if you have a house that you're listing with an ADU and you're coming up with comps, one better have an ADU because we are not allowed by any lender policy to send in an appraisal with an ADU without a comp that has an ADU. You just can't. They need to see that there is a demand and marketability for an ADU in this area. And if for some reason you can't find one, and I had to use one from 2015, that comp will not be on the grid, but it'll still be in my commentary. I'll say based on time adjustments and what was happening in 2015, casitas were worth about 30%, yada, yada, yada. So it is a thing. A common rule of thumb is just know that it's not going to be dollar for dollar as the main home. But in your analysis, when you are listing that home, do not include it in overall square footage. You're going to be up for a real hard awakening, the homeowner and you. And in your analysis, make sure you use a comp that also has a casita. We have to. That's the one I would say that no appraiser is sending in a file on a house with an ADU where all of the comps don't have ADUs. They just don't. It doesn't work. Underwriters don't take it. They send it back. They need something, just one comp on there that shows something similar. It can be dated. It can be distant. So that's what we'll do, but that's where that rule comes into play is we don't have to stay in a mile, but if we had to go 2 miles to get a casita, we will. If we had to go 2 miles to find one on a golf course, we will. You know, that's what we have to do is to show like for like. Doesn't matter about time, but in your pre-research as a realtor, have that information ready because if it's got an ADU, don't lump it together.
So
Big mistake.
I like what you said about the 2015 ADU, and you brought it to the point of, hey, this was about 30% of the, whatever you said that I could see. So can you do that today? So if you have to go 2-3 miles out for a pool,
this is my favorite.
Can you say a pool usually?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Here's it, and
I like that.
I can do this real fast. It's a very simple like phrase that we have. It's easier to prove a time change than it is to prove a market difference. You can statistically prove what's happened in your neighborhood since 1985. You can prove that very easily. You type in Maryville 16, and since from 1985, you can see this value trend. You can predict it. Maryville 16 versus Verrado, that's a way different thing to deal with. It's easier to prove time than it is to prove a different market. So yes, we can definitely use data and information, which is why that's one of my pet peeves is, oh, we can't go past 6 months. Yeah, you can. As a matter of fact, there are multiple times where if you have a unique feature, I have to go back 2 years or 3 years. And while no one wants to see a 3-year-old sale on the grid, it will be in the addendum. I will say based on a 2015 analysis between 123 Main Street, which had a casita, and 124 Main Street, which didn't, they were the same and it ended up as this, adjusted for time, here's your support. And that works. So
Ooh, wow.
easier to prove time than it is to prove a market difference. So dated before distant is the thing that we usually say.